First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Buongiorno, principessa. I was trying to tell someone where that was from the other day. I think it's from that movie where I always say it. So I say, Buongiorno, principessa. I think it's the movie Life is Beautiful. Is that the one? And he says it to the little girl. Am I making that up? They're like in the concentration camp and he's like, am I making this up? I could be making this up. But anyway, that's where I always think Buongiorno, principessa is from. Although, hello, princess, or whatever it means, I'm sure it's just from that, not from that specific film. Anywho, Buongiorno, principessa. What's more than one princess in Italian? I have no clue. Although I bet my guest would know. Our guest today is a longtime friend of mine. Oh my gosh, I've known Ryan Hill, who I'll tell you about in a second, for decades now. Ryan, is that right? Ryan and I went to the same school as Mike and I too. But Ryan also was really influential at the beginning of my career because he was on the board of my theater company, but also just we collaborated and connected on so many different ways. And Ryan, in this episode, we didn't even talk about all that. Anyway, today's guest is Ryan Hill, founder and CEO of Apotheosis Events and one of New York's most sought-after event producers. Ryan began his career in the theater, working as an associate producer alongside Broadway powerhouses Jeffrey Seller and Kevin McCullum, where he helped create some of the most memorable events of the early 2000s, including the legendary closing night celebration for Rent. He later founded Apotheosis, an event production company that has become known for creating unforgettable experiences for clients ranging from Hamilton, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, FX and the Rolling Stones, to Fortune 500 companies, major nonprofits, and countless private celebrations. Along the way, Ryan has built a reputation for blending creativity, logistics, storytelling, and spectacle into events that people talk about long after they're over. And today, we're talking about the art and business of creating experiences, what it takes to produce world-class events, and the creative risks involved in building a career that's almost like anyone else's. Although we get into a lot more of other things too, because Ryan really is so dynamic. I mean, he started as an actor, became a director. I think he has dance experience. Isn't that right, Ryan? Actually went back and ran the School of Dance at UNCSA for a little bit of time. He's really a Jane of all trades, I would say. And so I'm not surprised that Apotheosis is sort of like an amalgamation of all the things that he's so good at. And I think we even talk about this in the podcast. Who knows what's to come after this, because he's so multi-talented. It was so fun to reconnect with Ryan and also to connect him with Mike, because I really believe the two of them have they have a future together. I don't even know what that means. They could not be more different, but also there's a future there. So please enjoy this really great episode with none other than Ryan Hill.
Yeah, I've wanted you and Mike to meet for a very long time. There's something symbiotic about the two of you. I'm telling you now, from completely different worlds, the two of you would be good Judies. But we all are pickles, and I was telling Mike that you graduated as a director from the School of the Arts, and then I'm going to start here, Ryan, because I want to see if this is true for you. So,
Are we all the same school?
We're all the same school of drama.
School of drama.
All the same school of drama. Mike was considering ballet for a bit, but then he changed.
I couldn't eat enough mothballs. Or cotton balls or whatever they. No, that's.
No, but Ryan, Ryan, we're going to talk so much about Apotheosis Events and what you've created and what you do there, for sure. But when I think about you, Ryan, I think about someone who's a shapeshifter, and I'm saying this because we all went to School of Drama, different years. You graduated as a director. We're going to talk a bit about your work as a producer as well. But do you feel like ultimately you identify as somewhat of a shapeshifter, someone who, even Apotheosis, might be for now, but who knows what's coming down the line?
Yes, totally. I think it's astute of you to say that, because I do think that's the thing that's gotten me not to where I am, but at least put me where I am. Because I think the phrase "gotten me to where I am" sort of implies like I've reached a destination, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. So yes, in a way, I kind of adapt to what comes, and whether that's from like being a Gemini or just sort of like my makeup in general. I mean, I think it all started because I wanted to go to acting school, like so many people, and went to acting school and was successful at that, and left school and was pursuing sort of being an actor. But my first internship right after acting school for the first time was assisting the general manager of Sacramento Music Circus. And so I kind of like right away went into at admin, like the admin side of things. And that specific summer, I will omit the year as it is indicative of my age. No, I'm not necessarily ashamed of how old I am. I love how old I am. It was 1999, and I had just graduated from acting school. And that summer, I had been going to Music Circus my whole life and watching like Donna McKechnie do Sweet Charity and Leslie Uggams do Into the Woods. And they always had big stars, but like stars of musical theater.
Big stars to me, those two
like
names.
Tom Cruise, but like big stars to me.
Yes.
And they always had big stars and big shows, and I had season tickets my entire life, basically. And so getting to work there was kind of a dream come true. And I kind of put myself in charge. I was working in the general manager's office of like meeting people at the airport and basically taking care of the acting company. Because that's, if I look back on it, like that's what I was really wanting to be there for, was to like meet people. And I was very like ambitious and very excited. And it was kind of the first taste I had of like, whoa, kid, like take a breath. Like I was like, let's go. And I would meet people and I would know everything about them. And they were all sort of like, ugh. And it's kind of that first thing where you realize, like, now I look back at those kids in musical theater comedies who know everything. And I was like, oh my God, that was me.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get it at the time until someone that you've listened to on a soundtrack your whole life is like, hey, you're here. Like, breathe into it. Relax. Like, let's just be friends. Don't, So I remember the second week was during Bye Bye Birdie, and the costume designer and the head of the costume shop were at like fisticuffs. And the general manager said, go fix this. And I mean, it was 99, so I was 22.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in and I kind of like fixed it. Like I took these two people and we sat down at a table and we like talked through it. And I remember the head of the theater company saying to a friend of mine who was the stage manager, like, oh, wow, look out for him. Like he's going to do something. And I sort of felt really good about it. And that summer was so transformative for me because I was very successful and I also failed.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in the first round of acting school, you sort of learn those big lessons of like 10 minutes early is on time is late.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give other actors notes. Like, don't talk to people about their performances. Don't talk to people in shows about the things because they're in a process. And those are things that have stuck with me like my entire career. But also, they tell you when you first get to acting school, at least in that period, like failure is the thing the most important thing you can do in acting school, like is not be good. Because you kind of have to not be good in order to figure out how to be good. But I think the mistake that people make in acting school, and certainly in dancing, we'll sort of get to School of Dance, I think maybe at some point when I went back to School of the Arts, which was second school, I think the biggest mistake that people make is they don't pursue failure. Like they pursue excellence, which is important, but they don't pursue failure with the same kind of fervor. Like dancers are always trying to be perfect in class because, strangely, like that's how you get people to notice you, you know. And it's a little bit of the double standard of training. It's like we're always telling people, you know, be good. And we see how people respond to people being good and not necessarily responding to people failing. But the failure is how you actually learn how to calibrate the rest of your career or how to be. So, you know, that first summer, like I was very successful in that people noticed me for what I was doing well. But I definitely like also took my eye off the ball because I was a young, excited 22-year-old who was meeting all of his heroes.
Yeah.
And I remember the marketing department gave me this job where I had to get the cast of every musical to sign these posters for patrons. And
that's always fun.
Every person who was there that summer, like I had these great relationships with everybody who was there that summer, but I didn't get one of those posters signed. and in the summer they were like, "Where are the posters?" And I was like, "Oh, God." But I learned, like, you can't, you know, it's important to balance. Like, you have a work to do, and you can have fun, but you have to make sure, you know, those things are in balance. So yes, so it started with acting school, but my first job was in admin. Then I went back to my first alma mater and was cast in Summer Company. It was a conservatory called PCPA, so it was an equity theater. It was also a conservatory, so the school ran on equity schedule. So we always had Mondays off. And if you were lucky enough to get into shows on the main stage, you had that on top of your schoolwork. So I went back there to do a summer of shows and asked if I could work in casting. Did an internship in the casting office, then became the assistant to the artistic director, stayed there for a year doing that, decided to go back to school to get a degree, went to Southern Oregon University in Ashland, Oregon, worked at Oregon Shakespeare Festival in the box office because I just wanted to be there. And stayed there for a year and then went back and did another. Oh, actually, I'm getting these things. I'm reversing these roles. I went to Southern Oregon for a year, then went back to PCPA, worked in the casting office, did that, stayed there for a year, and then was thinking I was going to be in Summer Company again, and instead applied to School of the Arts to be a director, and flew out, met Robert and Gerald, did an audition, went to see a production of The Country Wife that night, and felt like I was watching a Broadway show.
Wow.
It was in performance place. I'd never seen costumes and wigs like that. I'd never seen a set like that. The acting was truly astonishingly good. And at intermission, Robert pulled me aside and was like, "We're going to accept you if you want to come." I went that summer to do an internship at the Guthrie as a director, and then started school and moved to Winston-Salem on September 11th, 2001.
Wow.
Woke up the next day to the world like completely changing. My mom called me and was like, "I think you should come home." And I was like, "Well, Lynette, I'm not flying today." That's not going to work out. So I think I'm here. I think I'm here for a little while. And then went into School of the Arts, right? Like this summer, I did an internship. I did a fellowship at the O'Neill the next summer and worked on Avenue Q as a directing fellow when it was at the O'Neill. So I got to know that team and worked on a Polly Penn musical, and then went back into second year. And in the middle of second year, like I was experiencing success, you know, like I was having good, my directing projects were going well. Everything was really good, but I felt like I wasn't fulfilled, like with just directing or no. So the three of us went to School of the Arts. We're all School of Drama, so I can like speak in language that you guys will understand. Like, what I knew from the way I was being trained was that you shouldn't tell actors how to do their job, right? Like, Gerald's philosophy was, from a directing perspective, was always lead them there, like get them to the way you want to do it. And what I realized was that I did not have the patience for that. I would sit in a room, I would sit in the studio, I would sit in rehearsals, I would sit in watching, and what I was doing well was walking up to Michael Bro, who was a person I was assisting doing company, and I would say, it shouldn't be that, it should be this. She shouldn't say it that way, she should say it this way. And, you know, he was always saying, yes, you're right, yes, you're right. And so what I realized was that I was more of an editor than a creator, which is not to say I'm not creative, but my skill is in responding to something and not necessarily creating something out of nothing, which really applies to how I do my job with my clients now, in a very specific way that I don't want to lose track of, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. So yeah, I just realized, and I said to Robert and Gerald, you know, I don't think I'm supposed to be a director the way that you're teaching me to be. I was constantly telling them about how I thought the posters we were putting up on campus were ugly, that the way I thought we were, you know, getting the word out about shows was not right. I would have thoughts about costumes. And I said, I just feel like directing is something I can do, but it's not maybe what I should do. And I think I should be a producer. And Gerald was like, you are exactly right. And he said, you can go be a director. Like, it's not that you can't, but I think you're onto something and you should pursue it. And what can I do to help you? And he set me up with a lot of interviews with a lot of producers. And I interviewed with Margot Lyon, who at the time was producing Hairspray, or getting ready to. And no, it was, because when I was at the O'Neill that summer, they sent the company that, like, a week before I left, they sent the company to see a preview of Hairspray on Broadway, and I was seething with jealousy when I got there. I got no trip to New York. I just got a hot box of an apartment in a ramshackle cottage on the property. It was like, had no air conditioning, and I was like, how will I ever make it with this? But I was so happy to be there. But it was a great summer. But anyways, I interviewed with Margot Lyon, and she said, I don't have anything in my office, but my colleague Adam Epstein might. Go meet him. I went and met Adam. They hired me. I met his associate, Lynn Shaw. They hired me for an internship. So when I moved to New York after graduating, I immediately started an internship working on the show Hairspray and joined the Ushers Union, because it was an unpaid internship, right?
Yeah.
Like, also, like, speaking of like how you survive as a young creative person in New York when you first moved there, like, I remember thinking my rent in Winston-Salem was like $400 a month.
Right.
I know.
And I remember moving to a room in an apartment in Astoria and it being $750. And I remember thinking, how will I ever do this? How could I ever pay $750 a month? But I was like, whatever, I'm doing it. I'll figure it out. So I did an unpaid internship where they paid for my lunch and they gave me a monthly Metro card every month to get there. And I joined the Ushers Union. So I would, I had union benefits and pay, and I saw a different Broadway show every night, ushering them. And then I worked at the Parker Meridian Hotel doing the overnight shift from 11 to 7. So I would sort of go to my internship, usher a show, work overnight at a hotel, and then like rinse and repeat. And on the weekends, I didn't have the internship or the hotel. I would just usher shows. My mom was like, you're going to die. And I was like, no, this is like the best.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. Then in the fall, my internship was ending and I applied for a receptionist job at the producing office, because I thought if I can get in the door as anything, I can do something with that. And got offered that job. And the day I started, Michelle Pollack, who's now my executive coach,
amazing,
Michelle Pollack said, I hired you because you were the only person I thought could replace me, and I haven't told them yet that I'm leaving. And so she's like, you have 4 months to make it, like, or break it, to get my job. And I like chased it. Like, I just did everything to get Kevin McCollum and Jeffrey Seller, who were the heads of the producing office, to notice me. It worked. I took over when she left. And kind of the rest of that is like history in terms of that was the next 5 years, until another meeting with Gerald where he said, Ethan Stiefel's taking over the job of the dean of the School of Dance at School of the Arts. He needs someone just like you, but not you. And I was like, well, why not me? And he said, oh, it's because you're doing what you're doing. You are opening in the Heights. You're opening title of show in 2 months. You've got a thing going. And yeah, so that was kind of the next chapter. I'll stop there. Otherwise, I'll just keep going with.
Well, here's what's I don't know if this registers with you, but sort of like something that sort of came up. I'm going to be a little hyper weird right now, or sort of like esoteric here, because I think that we're moving into a very strange moment in the arts in general, where generalists will be the ones who keep it alive, and generalists will be able to survive. People are adaptable. We actually, Josh and I are basically adjunct professors at UNCSA right now through our business. And, this is when we're consulting the school, and this is something that's coming up right now with the new conservatory models. What does it mean to train a whole artist? Like, you get the craft skills, you get these disciplines, but so much is becoming, so many of the skills we learned, don't add up to a profession. They add up to a person who has skills, who can do now something like, expansive, like you have done throughout your career, but the skill itself is not enough. My acting skill, my dance skill is not enough to get me a job, especially as AI is deprofessionalizing so many skills, unfortunately. And so it's like, what I'm sort of taking away from this is is sort of like, it seems like, correct me if just hearing this, it's like you're following sort of like your bliss in some ways, or following where there seems to be momentum. It's like you really wanted to, do the acting stuff, it sounded like, but, it wasn't like, oh, so subsequently, I have to, taking the marketing job at the theater may not be aligned, but also it is aligned because it's exactly where I want to be, or taking the general management job here is exactly where I want to be. And so this more expansive view of your identity, allowed you into all of these very interesting avenues. Did you ever have like any identity crises around these things as you were bouncing between sort of being a general manager, director, being the internship, doing the internship for producing? Did you ever feel like you were like, what am I doing? Or did you always feel like you had a strong compass? And what was that compass, if you felt like a strong center in all of this? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I always felt like I was walking through the doors that opened. Like, I'm not a particularly patient person. So I was doing what was coming. Not everything, like there were definitely times where I was like, oh, this isn't it. Or for better or for worse, I am a creature of follow your bliss it's an interesting term, because I definitely react quickly. Like, if something isn't right, or if something isn't working, or if something doesn't feel good, like, I pivot fast. But I do feel like I just walked through the doors that were opening, and I was doing things that felt good, that felt right, and felt in alignment with like what I was good at, what I could bring to it, how people were responding to what was going on. I never really questioned it. The only thing I ever questioned was like, what was I doing enough to please myself or please other people, or was I accomplishing what I thought people expected of me? So it was never like a question of what I was doing, more of like, was it, enough?
And yet it's so funny because you have I think of you as someone who has an incredibly high standard. And what I mean by that is you, Ryan, are so talented, meaning you got to hear him sing, Mike. He's just got the most incredible voice. You have such an appreciation for world class artists, and what they bring. I did in fact attend Ryan's Hamilton Tony party. That was off the charts, more than you could possibly expect. There's this. I don't know if you want to call it taste. I don't know if you want to call it again, just expectation of yourself and potentially others. That sort of seems to be a through line through everything you sort of pick up and touch. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think, and thank you, by the way. Joshua and I had this, one of my fondest memories of Winston-Salem in general is this night. We were at a very good friend of mine, Skip Dunn, who's a donor of the school. I met as a donor of the school, has become a good friend, and his partner, Mia, who are longtime very good friends of mine now. And Joshua and I were at their house one night, sitting at their piano, which was tucked into the corner of this banister, in a room with maybe the greatest acoustics
Wow.
in anywhere. And there were just people and friends sitting around, and Joshua and I sitting there, and Joshua was playing and we were singing. And it was like, the acoustics were so good. And sometimes you just have a sweet spot in your voice one night where everything is working. And like, I might have done like the best singing I've ever done in my life. It's such a good memory. So thank you for that. But for the memory and the compliment. But I do think that yes, it is what propels me, and it's also like the thing that is the source of my agony. In that, like, I have a standard, I have a kind of quest, and I think that to most people this will sound like I'm saying this for a compliment, and I really am not. I still feel like I haven't accomplished very much. And I know what I have accomplished. Like, I'm aware of the things that I've done. I'm aware that when I started my business, to be able to say, looking back, that I've done half of the events that I've done would be in that first day, in those first months. If you told me what I would accomplish in this business, I would be like, what? But I do think that part of what keeps me moving forward is the feeling of there's still more, like that there's always more. And I don't know that I will ever, I'll ever get to a place where I'm like, wow, I've done it. Like, even if you put a Tony or an Oscar or an Emmy or any of those sort of outward sort of symbols of success into my hand, I think that the next morning I would be like, okay, like famous West Wing line, okay, what's next? Like, I think that is my blessing and my curse. Like, it is the thing that moves me forward. It defines how I work and what I work towards. But I also think, like, it does sort of resign you to a life of slight unfulfillment.
Yeah.
Of course.
Which, again, it's not about not being grateful or recognizing the accomplishment, but it is, it just is what it is. I think it's like that. It's my blessing.
And I kind of want to, this is kind of jumping the gun a bit, but like, I am curious sort of with Apotheosis, like, what is sort of like, when you see as a business owner too, well, because what I'm taking away from what you're saying is, like, when you have an end point in mind, like, once I get that, I mean, as actor, in this business, for me, it's like, once you get your equity card, once you once you're off Broadway, it's like, you think that these things are gonna, and then, but if you keep sort of chasing these endpoints, a lot of times it's like burnout, because it's like, you get there and there's nothing else driving you beyond that external thing, whatever. And so I am curious, like, operating, your business, it's like, do you see an endpoint? Like, do you have an endpoint in mind of what it looks like, or is it just a day-to-day, like, wave you ride of of like what you want, what you desire, like, sort of like dealing with short-term projects, but like, is there like this is the final endpoint? Do you have that in mind, or is it just like, no, I just ride the wave of my passion and day to
No,
day?
it's the latter. It's, I think that, like I said, you start out, my career started as an event
Yeah.
planner in openings of Broadway shows, because when I left New York, when I had that dinner with Gerald, when I took the job as the assistant dean of the School of Dance and said, I'm leaving New York, I'm going back to Winston-Salem, like, what had happened leading up to that was I wanted to travel. When we opened a show out of town, I wanted to be there. And just being Kevin and Jeffrey's executive assistant wasn't always enough to get me on a plane. So I said I should be in charge of our opening nights. I literally just said to the company managers and Kevin and Jeffrey, I think I should be in charge of these.
Yeah.
And that kind of worked. Like, they were like, okay, great, do that. And the first one was White Christmas in San Francisco. And, I just worked with the people in San Francisco they planned the party and I did whatever I did to make it happen and arranged the opening night gifts for the cast. And like, that was it. But then it kind of stuck. So then with High Fidelity, they said, well, why don't you work with the planners we normally hire? And I did that. And then everyone loved that party. And then I said, okay, well, within the Heights, we don't need to hire them. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And we'll save money. And then people really loved that party. And a friend and a colleague at the time, Drew Hodges, who was the head of Spotco, who's the ad agency that we were working with, said, you're really good at this. You're throwing the best parties that people are going to. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. And at the time, I thought, oh, well, maybe, that's something for me. And then the School of the Arts job came along.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. So I went to do that. And then when I came back to New York, I was like, well, I know I'm good at throwing these parties. Well, when I came back to New York, it was very interesting. The sort of like modular way that I entered. At first, I thought, I don't want to do anything where someone's going to call me after work. So I got a job waiting tables at a restaurant that friends worked at. And that lasted exactly one night. Because every time, and it was an ego thing. That wasn't it wasn't nothing. I love the restaurant. I still go there all the time. It was Cafe Luxembourg on the Upper West Side. And the general manager, Morgan, who is now in a sales capacity at another venue, who I talk to all the time as a planner to salesperson, was like, are you sure you want to do this? Your resume just doesn't lead me to think. And I was like, no, yes, this is what I want. I just want to come, do a job, leave, and have it be over.
Yes,
and I literally one shift, and I ironed my apron and wrote some thank you notes and walked back in the next day. And she was like, no, really? And I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And she was like, well, there are many reasons why I think that's true, but the fact that you're returning an ironed apron and 2 handwritten thank you notes, I think is an example of why this probably isn't for you. Which is not to say that people in service are not people who care about details, but it's a me thing.
Yeah.
So then I got a job working. Drew Hodges said, hey, the person who owns our parent company now is looking to start an events business. I want to introduce you. He did. I started working for them. I did a pitch to a company called Gilt, which was like a luxury online retailer. They loved the pitch so much that they stole me from the ad agency. And we're like, we want to bring you in-house to run sales for our city team. So they offered me equity in the company, and I was like,
I think it was events, right, Ryan? Because I used Guilt all the time, and I think they had like an events part of their
the city division.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm never going to get equity in a tech company. I got to do this. And I did, and I was there for a few years, but I kept doing shows. People kept hiring me to produce openings of shows while I was at Guilt, and that's when Hamilton came along. And I just thought, okay, well, now I'm doing the opening night of Hamilton. And if there were any time to like start an events company anything I could parlay and launch a company off of, this is it. So I formed the LLC. That was in August of 2015. Formed the LLC. I made a deal with myself that if I booked a certain amount of money in event contracts, that I would leave Guilt. And in February of 2016, two very good friends and colleagues and now clients of mine, John Johnson and Sue Wagner, brought me like 5 shows.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is it. I got to do it. So I went in, gave my notice, and Guilt was like, we can't lose you. And I was like, okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll stay for X amount of time, but I don't want to come to the office ever anymore. And it was also good because I could keep my health insurance for a while longer. Yeah. And they gave me like 4 more months. So I had like 2 jobs for 4 more months. And then I formally left Guilt. And then that was 10 years ago.
Well, I feel like the Hamilton parties, which if I potentially still to this day, you were sort of the person doing all of the opening night parties for Hamilton everywhere.
Yeah. I did New York and then Chicago. I did New York Tonys, which was just, it is an apotheosis moment in my career. Like I named my company Apotheosis. It means the highest point in the life of something, or to raise something to the level of the divine. And that was one of them. Like in the course of my business, that party will always be one of the like diamonds in, and that was for many reasons. It was not just my work. It was what was happening with the show at the time, the weather, Central Park, the sun rising over Central Park while Questlove was finishing a like 9-hour set. Like so many energies, so many people's accomplishments fed that moment of what that party was. But then I did Chicago and then Los Angeles. So that was a big thing right at the beginning of my career. So to get back, Mike, to that first question, like, I don't know that there will ever be like one thing, because there's always something bigger. Like Hamilton was so big, and then I got the call to do the North American premiere of Harry Potter, which I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't even believe when they brought me in for the meeting, I was like, I can't even believe this is happening. This will change everything. And then after Harry Potter, it becomes, another call you get where you're like, I can't, the 100th anniversary of Harvard Business Review, your first wedding, which was for me $60,000. Then your first, bigger wedding, which was $250,000. Then you get your first $1 million wedding, and you're like, oh my God. Then you do your first $2 million wedding. Then you do your first, more than that birthday party. Like it's that line from that song in Smash, They Just Keep Moving the Line.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like the line just keeps moving, unfortunately, or fortunately. Like you get to the line and then the next line appears and you're like, okay, what's the next biggest thing? What's the next? For me now, it's not goals. I mean, yes, it is. It's goals of like more financial achievement, more this. But the thing for me now has become with events, like when do I get to meet the client who's going to really let me flex every creative muscle, who's going to say, I want a birthday party that is equal parts La Traviata and Moulin Rouge, who gives me all the money to bring in a full theatrical team, to bring in to like do a full show within a full event, within a 27 tent complex.
Joshua's 40th birthday party.
Like that's it. Now it has become like, I think probably for the first time in the right way, like a pursuit of like, when do I get to really throw everything that I've got into one event and make it like, really sing. That's the next big, like, delicious goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see producing then as producing events as more creative work or more operational, and why?
It's both.
Both.
It's both. And here's what I tell people about our company. We are planners, right? Like, we specialize in logistical excellence. Like, you give me an event where I have to close down streets and build walls and work with the FAA and Homeland Security, and like, that's when I get a real, forgive the term, but that's when I get really aroused. Like, I get very excited the harder it becomes. The more like logistics, if I have to like close subway tunnels because of security, I'm like, yes, this is what we do.
I want to fuck everybody's day up in the city.
Exactly, yes, that does please me. Not the fucking up, but the logistical nightmare. I'm like, yes, that's
cool.
So, and that doesn't sound very creative, but there is a creativity to it.
Yeah.
But what I tell people is, we are excellent planners. We're maybe some of the best planners. Full stop. In terms of logistics and details and how we put it together and the way we do our paperwork and the intricacy of all of those things and what it leads to as a result for our clients. But what I say to them is, very much like a play or a Broadway musical or a film, you, as our client, and every client deserves a different creative team. And no one creative team is right for every client. So when you come to me, I'm truly like a producer. You bring me your baby, your play, your whatever your event is, and I listen to you. And that's when my mind comes alive. So again, it goes back to like, I'm a responder. You start to tell me your story and I start to invent like what we're going to do together and who we're going to do it with. So that's when I start to assemble like the right team for you. You know, like, who's the right creative team for this client? Who's the right designer? Who's the right lighting person? Is there another person that we can bring in that's exactly right for this? Who's the right calligrapher? Who's the right hair and makeup team for this client, and why? Like, is it about temperament? Is it about skill? Is it about, some jobs require another level of logistical excellence that not all design teams are great at, So I do think there's a creativity in putting together those teams, but then also in managing those teams in the same way that I watched Kevin and Jeffrey do for years. You know, what they were so good at was creating an environment where artists could create and felt protected from every side, from every angle. They nourished them, they took care of them, they hosted great dinners for them. When, after a long night of working and doing notes in the back room at our office, they'd take everybody to dinner. Like, the things that I learned about how to support creativity and support artists from them were the things that people tell me are the most remarkable things about working with me now. Like those examples.
I'm going to ask kind of an esoteric question if I can again, but relate, because when I hear you talk about this idea of like, they come to you with your baby and the inventing starts, the potential, the scope, the scale, and it's that like the blue skying, letting your mind run free about like, and also the pieces of like, the connections and the people we can get involved and who would be best, and having that Rolodex. One of the things I get really aware of with myself as a creative and is this idea of overpromising. Like there's this sense of like when you think big, when you think big, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, right, to show up and deliver, especially when you then vocalize that to a client, right, to somebody who's literally paying you. And look, if you under deliver to if you overpromise, under deliver, that's death, probably I would imagine, certainly in your business. How do you, and I'm sorry, this is such a wooby question, but like, because look, getting all of these pieces together, I'm sorry, but I think about fundraising, for instance, it's not rocket science. I mean, it is like, you have to have the knowledge, but then you actually just have to have the balls to go out and make it happen and like literally make that thing a reality. Like, yes, there's so many logistical like details, personalities, but it's really just about having the gumption and the drive to manifest something. And how do you deal with like that pressure that you put on yourself with your business? Like how do you view it? What's your perspective on these things when they come up? Like, do you frame them in a certain way for yourself? How do you deal with this pressure you put on yourself to deliver for your clients and to meet your own vision of what you want to do?
Sure. Blood pressure medication.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm kidding and I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, that is the reality of my business. Like, we are event planners, and planning is always ranked within like the top 9 most stressful jobs in the world. Like,
Oh yeah.
it is the dealing with the expectation of someone's wedding day
Yes.
is a kind of like emotional hurricane. And I am blessed. I've had unbelievable clients across the board for weddings. And part of that is like, we don't take everyone we talk to.
Right.
We don't work with everyone we talk to.
Right.
There are just times when like something is not the right fit, or
Yeah.
energetically I'm like, this isn't the right, which again, you can always be like woo woo with me, because I've been down to every I've been to every healer, I've been to every ceremony.
Every
ceremony.
I love it. Yeah.
I've walked every labyrinth.
I have a drawer full of talismans.
Yeah, exactly. Behind that curtain is just a shrine with crystals, and
like, I've been shakabuku'd. I've done it all. I
pull out a shrunken head, just like
I mean,
one of the table.
So never be afraid of that
Okay,
with me.
cool.
But all of that to say, like, it's enormous pressure, and the way that I deal with it is just by making sure that we are. It's like I've resigned myself to a life that means certain things. Like, after the city goes to sleep and when my husband is asleep is typically when truly, I again, I'm being very woo-woo about this, but when the city stops thinking and the emails stop coming in and my husband falls asleep is typically when my mind like pops open.
Yeah.
And when I say I get the biggest downloads, like the silence around me creates space for my mind to kind of pop open. And it's a sort of like sending signals up and then getting signals back. And some of the things that have saved the biggest events that we do are those nights. And so as much as I hate them, because I will walk into the office some mornings and be like, yeah, I slept like 2 hours last night, I don't know how this is going to happen.
Right.
It is just symptomatic of giving my vessel the time and the grace that it needs whenever it needs it to like give and receive the messages about the events. Because truly, like, things come in for me that I'm like, this just changed that event, or I hadn't thought of this. Or, for example, when I was doing the Ronaldo House 100th anniversary centennial ball early in my career, I was laying in bed one night and out of nowhere, I got this message of, you have to look at the rendering of, we created this gigantic 75-foot long flat that was hand painted by D&P, by Design and Production at School of the Arts, which was a painted backdrop of Ronaldo House with the lady of the house standing in the window looking out through the glass at the audience, like looking back at the last 100 years of the house at the audience there gathered. And I worked with Howard Jones on it. And I just got this message of like, you have to look at the length of this, because I just somehow thought it isn't drawn right in the tent. Like I got up out of my bed and I looked at it and I was like, oh, and I called Howard the next day and I was like, we're going to need to fold it back because we're going to, and so I get these downloads about things that like don't have room to come in the sort of like,
exactly,
antics of every day. But they come, and I sort of have this undying trust in my system to always deliver to me the messages that I need. And I trust it. It kind of has never failed us, which doesn't mean that it won't, but it has never failed us. And I kind of just trust that process of giving myself over to being a vessel for the thoughts and the energy and the things that have to come through to get onto paper, and then I make really long checklists.
Well, that's I mean that's here's why I think that's really valuable. Just even for me right now to hear it, because it's like number one, filter in what you commit to, right? So it's like you don't commit to everything, right? And not every single potential client you commit to. It's like you have to be choosy about what you're actually going to decide to commit to. There has to be some sort of filter to actually say okay. And then just like this idea of, first off, consequences, accepting the consequences of a commitment, right, is like huge. Like when you take on a party or an event or a wedding or whatever it is, you have to accept the consequences of what that means, and you learn what those are, right? Like, there are gonna be nights where you don't sleep. There's gonna be, but this idea of like giving yourself space, because as an artist, which you are an artist, and we're all artists here, it's like we have to, it feels like it feels like we have to, especially in this time, fill our time, especially probably as a business owner. I could imagine the stress of like, if I'm not doing something every single second of the day, if it's not filled with me, like literally doing everything I can, I would be like, fuck, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm dropping the ball. But what I hear you saying is like, you actually have to it's so hard in today's world to let time and space happen, to not fill it with, either work or like, binge watch. There's nothing wrong with these things, but it's like, binge watching Netflix or whatever. It's like to actually give yourself time and not to feel like you have to fill every single second with something, because you're right. That's when the best things come to you. That's when the solutions come to you and stuff like that. So it makes sense to me. It's really cool.
I think it's, sorry, Joshua, go ahead.
No, please. No.
I think it's also, strictly from a business perspective, because I live in a business world.
Yeah.
Not like finance. Not, but I live in a world that is very much about clients' dollars and cents and creativity. But people are paying us very well for a product, and it's our job to deliver that product. It's also our job to be sensible and smart about how we accomplish what we accomplish, and to define how people's expectations get managed in business. So, riffing off of what you said about like, I know that, my executive coach has tried to get me to build time into my day called creative time for 2 years. I do not do it.
Yeah.
It is in there. It's on my calendar. I do not do it. I work through it for 2 reasons. One is days are just busy for me. There are a lot of emails coming at me and a lot of phone calls. And also, my mind just works best at night when everyone else is quiet.
Yeah.
So if that's true, I think that what I'm saying is that as a person in the world, you have to maximize what you're good at, and fighting against it is not going to work for you.
Yeah.
So if I know my mind comes alive at night and I do some of my best work then what I did as a business person was write into my contract, this is when my day starts. And this is when you can expect emails from us. And this is when we're responsible for answering your emails. It's during this time and this time. And outside of that time, you may hear from us because I may work at 7 a.m. one day, and I may work at 8 p.m. one day. But I am legitimately only contractually responsible for answering your email between 10 and 6. That's an agreed upon term. And I give myself 10 because if I stay up until 3 doing work for you, I deserve enough time to then rest and then get to the office at a time that isn't 7 a.m. Now, sometimes I'll get clients who work in what I would say maybe is the more real business world, hotel owners, business people who start answering emails or start sending me emails at 4. Now, I'm not contractually obligated to get myself up, but sometimes I have to strike a balance between what I know someone is paying me and what their
Right.
expectations are. And so I will temporarily alter my schedule, and I'm making a choice to do it, that I will start getting up at 5 or 6 no matter what time I went to bed, because I know that client expects that product from me. I don't have to. My contract doesn't provide for it, but I make choices sometimes that are outside of that.
Yeah.
I also, if I'm up late one night and I know that the next day is going to be tough for me, I'll just put on an out of office that says, whatever, you expect delayed responses today, because it's about being responsible and managing expectations. If a client doesn't hear from you, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
Especially because I am very responsive very quickly by email.
Yeah.
It's how we are. We sort of took that ethos from the early days of CAA, which is every email answered every day. And that's sort of what I expect from me and my team.
Yeah.
Like, we will get back to you that day. It's not 100%, but we try and be in the high 90s.
Yeah.
Of like, you'll hear from us by email, from your email every day. But if that's not possible, just put on an out of office. Just tell people, you're not going to hear from me today, or my response will be delayed. Because managing expectations is,
Yes.
I think, one of the keys
Yes.
to success.
Yes.
Just telling people, hey, I'm very busy, or hey, like what you said, Mike, like I can't deal with everything. I just can't.
Yeah.
So some people will send me emails, and what I've learned is I'm not a person who likes to say no. I just want to please everybody, but it's not possible.
Right.
So I will say, I don't have room for this right now.
Yeah.
I might have room for it. Can you email me again? New vendors, people. I was a new vendor once, so I don't like to ignore anybody, because I was in that position of trying to become something at one point.
Of course.
And so when new people send me emails, if I can't deal with them, I try and say, hey, you've caught me in April. Between April and June, I can't talk to anybody. I don't have the bandwidth. I just don't have the energy or the bandwidth in my head. So can you email me again in July? Yeah. I want to talk to you. I want to know what you've got going on. Please come back to me in a time when I will be actually able to listen to you and digest what you have to give to me. So I think it's about being responsible for dealing with people.
Yeah.
Also, if humans are only capable of so much. So if you know that you're a person who really bangs it out at night, bang it out at night. Don't change that. Bang it out at night. Try and find a way to work in another way with the people that you work with, and in the world that you work in, to make what you do brilliantly possible.
I really like what you're saying there, because Mike and I in particular, especially because we now work with the juniors and seniors at the School of the Arts Drama in particular. It's like, sometimes how do you, when we're offering them ways of essentially looking at self-management as they prepare to jump into the quote-unquote real world, it's hard to try to teach something that is one size fits all, but also personalized. Yeah. And this is a major piece. And this is actually leading to a very different question, because going back to that looking at the rendering, in preparation for Renolda House. And Mike, I don't think there's anybody who's bigger fans of Ryan Hill than Patty and Malcolm Brown, by the way. Patty and Malcolm Brown.
So much.
I do too. I do too. Malcolm texted me literally this morning. He's like, when are you coming back? And they always ask about you, Ryan. Every single time they're like, have you seen Ryan? But I want to talk a little bit about the creative process of event planning, because, like you're saying, yes, creative, yes, operational. But if you were to be, is there a script for an event? And if so, how do you build the script? What are those beats of the script and what's the directive? How do you sort of formulate that? And do you sort of set something right up front, or does it really continue to evolve all the way up to the final day?
The script, in a way, it's like you're planning an event is writing the script
Right.
and writing the play.
Mhm.
So someone comes to you with an idea, and that idea is, I'm engaged to someone and we want to get married. And then we start to write the play. And we start to figure out what's the first chapter, what's the second chapter, what's the first act, what's the second act. And just the same thing with events is true with musicals. What's the 11th hour number? What's the moment? Is it a 15-minute fireworks show over the Hudson River to a soundtrack that Lin-Manuel Miranda and DJ Chucky Brown created together? And then, like, as a part of that fireworks show, do the Roots then come on stage and do an hour and a half set right after that? Like, is that how our evening peaks? Yes. And then we come down after that. So you write the script, but the necessity. So that wall at Ronaldo House is a really good example. So we started planning an event that we knew had to be a 600-person dinner inside a tent on the great lawn at Ronaldo House, right? Like that's the idea. And then we start writing the play. So you have to get all of those people into the tent. So where are they going to arrive? And where are they going to park? There's not enough parking on the grounds at Ronaldo House. So we have to contact Summit School across the street because they have enough parking spots. So now we have to valet people from across the street. You valet, you come over. How does that work? Now, once they're here, or actually the cars, they drove onto the Ronaldo House property. The cars went across the street and then came back for them. Okay, so now we know that. Now, how do they get to the tent? Okay, so they have to walk up this cement walkway. What's the walkway look like? Do we line that with lanterns? What's our budget? No, we don't have enough money to line that with lanterns, and they're only going to be there for 40 seconds anyways. So we're just going to light the walkway so nobody trips. Fine. Now they're at the entrance to the tent. What does the entrance to the tent look like? And you start to iterate and you start to write the story of the evening. And then you get inside the tent and you're like, okay, so behind the big tent is a catering tent. And we can't see inside the catering tent. And we also need a stage. And every stage needs a backdrop. So we could put up a wall of drape. Fine. Yeah, it'll be a great backdrop for a stage, but it's just a wall of drape. That's beautiful, but not particularly interesting. Who are our partners? Oh, we have a world-class conservatory in the same town, and that conservatory happens to have one of the best scenic design and scenic painting programs in the world. So is the backdrop now a great collaboration, which is also good for Ronaldo House and good for the city? And the mayor's going to be there, and the heads of School of the Arts are going to be there, and all of the major donors of School of the Arts, including the Browns, are going to be there. So that will please a lot of people. So then you start to think, okay, what can this look like? And then you call Howard Jones, who taught you Scenic Design 1 in your second year of the directing program, and you're like, Howard, who you also knew because you were the assistant dean of the School of Dance and collaborated on new backdrops for a new production of the Nutcracker, or an enhanced, we'll say, production of the Nutcracker. What can we do? And then Howard sends you a rendering. The School of the Arts decides this is a great project for us for many reasons. Our donors will love it. It's a great project for the students. It's great for us to be attached to this 100-year celebration. And then Howard sends you a rendering, which is absolutely perfect and breathtaking. And then they paint it. And then that becomes your backdrop. And so the play starts to write itself. And so you end up with a story that is very much a creative process. People bring you an idea and then you write a play or a musical, but you write an evening, and the evening has the same tenets of great theater, which is why at the end of the day, I say I have a degree in acting, I have a degree in directing. I don't do either of those things literally, but I do all of those things figuratively. And I also tell people, especially I have every year my interns, historically for the last 5 years, have been stage management students from School of the Arts. Who come and work with us in the summer. And I tell them, because there's a lot of like hand wringing and eye rolling about how hard the program is. And I'm always like, I've never smoked in my life anything, but I always light my imaginary cigarette and I say, I went to School of the Arts when the teachers in design and production smoked in their offices. It was a different time. Like there were no rules then. Like we were literally like we were getting crushed by the program because there were literally no guardrails for student protection. Like, but thank fucking God.
Yeah.
Like that program was a fire.
Yeah.
I walked across coals and I am grateful for every minute of it because I at 48 have more, and I'll just say this. I mean it, and I have more energy and stamina than anybody who's in their 20s or 30s on my team.
I believe it.
Like I can go because of School of the Arts. My number 2, by the way, like the person who I, in many ways, like built this company with me, working alongside me, is a School of the Arts stage management student who I met because Jamie Call Blankenship said, here are the 2 people you should have join your team from the program for the Ronaldo House ball.
Wow.
Like Henry Ballard was one of those 2 people, and he's been with me ever since, and thank God for him. But that program is a kiln, and you get put in the fire, and it like makes you, it cooks you into a being, and I am who I am, and I do what I do, and I can do it the way that I do it because of that. And then when I went back as assistant dean, that's when we started having the conversations of we might be working people too hard. So it was interesting to be a former student and in the room with the rest of the deans having that conversation of like, because I kept saying yes, but like my thing was always yes, but it's part of, we can make it better. Yes. We should make it better. Yes. But part of what it makes you into, whether you survive or not, is what gives you the ability to do things the way that you do it for the rest of your career. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe some people say it's not healthy.
Well,
For me,
now we're kind of a separate conversation, but here's where I 100% agree with you is that, and what I think needs to start to change, and you may disagree with this, I don't know, is that the rigor of a conservatory and that discipline, you're right, that is one of the unique attributes and one of the things that actually builds character. And, one of the things that conversations we've been having with the school is that, but then you're training them to try to then just, especially actors, but a lot, probably you train them to just then go and just submit their resumes at internships or press buttons on Backstage all day. So you're basically training the rigor and the discipline and the drive to then just go hopefully book a job or get a job somebody else gives you in industries that are contracting in employment. It's like in industries that are fundamentally shifting where, institutional employment is not necessarily the way forward. There are people building their own audiences. There are people monetizing their own art. Besides, they're not just booking jobs and sustaining, the middle class is disappearing across the board. So what I think is really fascinating just about conservatory training is you keep you train all this rigor and it's really served you. You're a business owner. And it's like you and it's like, how are we, so you have all this potential, but then it's got to be channeled into something beyond, hopefully somebody gives me a job. That's just that, I don't know.
No, I understand what you're saying. And the best example that I can come up with, and the thing that I say all the time, was being the assistant dean of the School of Dance was a really unique experience because that program runs from freshman year of high school, 8th grade, if you're really talented, all the way through a master's in college, and so what I always say is the really, and I'm in touch, I still have relationships with a lot of the students from my time there, one of whom like left school, went to Barnard College, graduated, went to work for Accenture, you know, and in her mid-20s was flying all over the world telling CEOs what 15% of their workforce they were going to fire. To be able to, like, was working as a McKinsey consultant, you know what I mean? Like, but it was the rigor of living through being a freshman in high school, living on campus, away from her family, having to get herself up every morning, do her own laundry, take herself to the pickle jar, get herself breakfast, get to classes, do her homework, get to rehearsals, do her homework, and rinse and repeat. And that kind of rigor, what that instills, and the discipline of dance, which is different than the discipline of drama, just in a physically different way. The way that a dance class starts with a bar, the physical rigor, in addition to the mental rigor of achievement in dance, it's a different but not better or worse thing. They are typically those high school dance students, whether they go on to dance or not, and you usually know by the time you're graduating whether you're going to dance big or you're going to dance like regionally, and there's nothing wrong with either of those. Both are valuable and necessary. But the rigor of that forms people into human beings that are built for accomplishment. And they tend to become very successful no matter what it is they end up doing, because that rigor, that discipline carries over.
100%.
So I do think, even, you know, I think rigor is the word, but training, rigor, and commitment, whether it ends up being what you actually do, because rigor and commitment can be applied in equal parts to sort of sticking with the thing. You know, like a lot of people from my class, like Jen Lyon, who's the star of the new NBC show
with Gus Haggerty. Gus isn't the lead, but Gus just did a little. You
know, Jen has been working consistently since she left, but she has stuck with it through, like, you know, she's been multiple times a series regular. But I think that part of being successful in this career is like sticking with it through feast and famine, and the rigor of commitment, and the rigor of discipline, and the rigor of sustainability, and the rigor of, you know, of all of those things kind of is what a school of the arts sort of prepares you for, I think, in an ideal scenario, you know.
You know, it makes me want to ask, to your point about, what's their name? Henry Ballard? Is that who's? Yeah. This was going to be the last question I wanted to ask you, but what would you say to someone who feels like they're pivoting away from their original path?
Well, first, I would ask them a question first, which is, are you pivoting away for yourself because you want to pivot away, or are you pivoting away because you feel like you haven't accomplished what you wanted to? Like, why are you pivoting away? Because I think that's the beginning of the answer. Because I have pivoted away 100 times, but always, luckily for me, in the right direction. And that was a combination of following what I felt was right for me, and like walking through the door that opened, even if it wasn't the door that I thought should open or could open. Sometimes the pivot is the key, right? Like, sometimes the pivot is the thing. I think it's about why. Like, why are you doing it? Because if it's just about, you know, the world telling you that success in acting is only one thing, which is television, film, an Emmy, Independent Spirit Award, an actor, you know, like, you know, I know people who have been doing leads at regional theaters their entire careers. That's a successful acting career. It's a very successful acting career. You know, I don't think anybody graduating from the School of the Arts, in their mind, I think they all want to be Mary Louise Parker, or, you know, because that's sort of what we tell you is success. Anna Camp, we tell you one thing is success, which is Dane DeHaan, Anna Wood, like, and that it's the people whose names are in papers. when like no one is saying to you, you will be so lucky if you play a lead in a show at the Guthrie every
Right.
year for the rest of your life.
Right.
That is, if you are a working actor in regional theater, even in the ensemble, if you're not in the lead, if you're always the character actor, if you're always in the back, but if you work for 25 years and you're happy and you're doing what you wanted to do, the Oscars and the Emmys don't mean anything because the media tells you that's what's important. Like, do you get to do what you set out to do at a level of quality that makes you happy for the rest of your life? And if you do, that's amazing. That's it. That's the goal. Like, you know, like, I just don't think that we tell people that success isn't measured by media. It's measured by, you know, happiness, fulfillment, getting to go to rehearsal every day. If that's at the Guthrie, amazing. If that's at the Pie Crust Players in Bakersfield, California, and you're playing Mrs. Shin and the Music Man, if you're happy, great.
Dream.
That's awesome. I would be a fucking incredible Eulalie McKechnie.
You really would.
Find somebody, ask me. But, you know, like, I just think that it's like, why are you pivoting? Are you pivoting because you're working with a like skewed to me definition of what success means? Like, are you pivoting? I think I hate to answer a question with a question.
No,
but like,
makes
think
sense.
like, why are you pivoting? Yes, pivoting is great. It can be incredible, but why are you doing it?
100%. 100%. Well, it kind of brings us back to like the very first thing we were talking about, Ryan, about like why, you know, I've been talking about you to Mike for so long because I think the three of us just as people are all unique, multi-dimensional artists, not complimenting ourselves, just saying that. But you know, this shapeshifter idea, shapeshifting based on this not ever changing why, but of following an impulse, a trusted impulse, you know, that's based in this idea of like, where can I be most effective? Where can I be most happy at this moment in my life? And it's, I would argue, you know, you remind me so much of my mother in regards to, exactly, in all the good ways, in so much as she's the kind of people who go, oh, I'm going to do this now, and are wildly successful. That go to guilt for a little time. They say, no, we can't lose you. That, you know, that then all of a sudden takes over running the school of dance. That then pivots to, you know, one day at Cafe Luxembourg, returning the Iron Apron. That then leads into, you know, a 15-minute firework display at the opening night of Hamilton. That then set the course for the next decade. I mean, that's its own unique skill and trust and confidence, and which is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, because per that very thing you just spoke to about this idea of potentially quote unquote pivoting, and what the school, even talking about the rigor, sets us up for. There's no one way. There's no one size fits all. It's ultimately what's going to bring us the most joy. So all goes to say, I'm super appreciative, and I actually have so many more questions. I don't know why I'm so especially interested in event planning. Actually, Mike, I didn't tell you this. I emailed Ryan. I don't even know what it was now. Was it a year ago, Ryan? I was like, listen, if you're ever looking for extra help, I'd love to come. Remember, I was like, if you're looking for extra support, because I value the standard and expectation of what you're creating. So thank you so much for
awesome,
spending so
Ryan.
much time with us, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
I